Thank you for joining us for the UCA Building Score Sheet Breakdown. Today we're going to dive into the building score sheet used for all the performance divisions. As a part of our philosophy, UCA is concentrating on crowd leading, spirit raising, athleticism, entertainment, as well as a solid, well-executed routine. There are a total of 3 score sheets as well as 2 safety and deduction sheets. The cheer score sheet is worth 35 points and the 2 music score sheets are worth 65 combined. Judges will be assigned to a category and that's all they'll consider when scoring. If a judge is assigned to the cheer score sheet, they would only be focused on the cheer. Same thing for the 2 music score sheets. They would only take into account things that happen during the music portion of the routine. Here we have the building score sheet. While there are 2 versions, they're extremely similar. This one is the co-ed version. However, the only differences are marked in red. While there are a few other divisions that either allow males or have co-ed in the name, this score sheet is only used for junior varsity, small, medium, and large co-ed. All junior high, all-girl JV, all-girl varsity, and non-tumbling teams will use the building score sheet with the parts in red removed. Quickly looking at the topics, we have partner stunts and pyramids. Each one has 2 scores, one for perfection of skill as well as one for difficulty. Notice in both situations, the perfection of skill or execution score is worth more than the difficulty score. The final section is the building overall impression. Starting with our partner stunt section, we have perfection of skill or execution worth 15 points. Judges will need to take in consideration all parts of the stunt, including tops, bases, and spotters. Are the tops lifting through their core, legs locked out, and the extension of their body positions? For the bases, placement of arms, stance, chest to chest during extended stunts. And for the spotters, the positioning and ability to assist. For synchronization and spacing, what is the timing of the skills performed? Is there uniformity in the performance of skills or on rippled skills a natural flow? For formations, think about the physical placement of groups as well as the location of personnel within the groups. This goes for the load-in, transition, and while stunts are stationary. Judges should not take into account stylistic differences between teams, but should expect groups on a team to perform skills in the same way. Think about how group stunts load in. Some teams might start with 1 foot loaded in from the beginning, while others hop in with 2 feet. Both options are great, but teams that use the same approach typically do appear to be more polished. In our difficulty of partner stunts, we have a few things to consider when awarding the 10 points. First and foremost, all scores that include difficulty are comparative to the other teams in the same division. What this means is that a team could receive a score at one event or during one round of competition and receive a different score at another event or a later round. Judges will treat all teams as if the most difficult skill could be performed by any team in that division, meaning the most difficult routine would not be guaranteed any particular score or range. They should just receive the highest score in the difficulty category. Now that we've covered that, difficulty will be based on the following, one of which is only on the co-ed sheet. First is the level of skills performed. On the next slide, we'll be able to go over a few examples and show how this comes into play. For the co-ed division mentioned earlier, the use of co-ed skills. At some time, one male must display a single base style skill. These can be unassisted or assisted by a spotter, but they must be single based. The unassisted skills will be rewarded more compared to those skills that are assisted. Judges will also take into account the number of stunts performed compared to the other teams. There is no requirement for a minimum or maximum number of stunts, but as an example, a team performing 3 stunts by 4 groups, or 12 total stunts, would be rewarded compared to another team performing the same 3 stunts by only 3 groups, or 9 total stunts. Thinking about the number of bases used, some stunt groups have a total of 5 people, a spotter, 2 bases, a front spot, and a top person, while other teams utilize only 4 people, removing the front spot. If 2 teams perform the same skill but one team utilized front spots, they would not be rewarded as highly as the team electing to not use front spots. Similarly, if a team performs a stunt with 3 people, 1 spotter, 1 base, and a top, they should receive more credit for the same skill. Within a division, judges should expect to see teams maximizing the number of groups allowed based on the division. For example, a small varsity all-girl team should have 12 athletes performing 3 stunts. This would score higher than a team performing the same skills with 11 athletes and only 2 stunt groups. Judges will also take into consideration the transitions and variety. There are numerous types of skills and ways to impress judges by including variety of inversions, release moves, and twisting skills. Note that skills that are not executed will not count towards a team's difficulty score and possibly could have a negative effect on execution. Example, if there are 5 groups but only 3 execute a skill, only 3 will count for their difficulty score. Here we have the stunt progressions updated for the 2019-2020 season to follow the updates allowed by USA Cheer and ACA. There have been some changes from the past, including adding even more skills. To follow along with the progression to a specific skill type, you would start in the second column on the left, and skills will become progressively more difficult as you make your way to the right. For example, with twisting skills, the first grouping includes quarter up and half up to preps and extensions. As you make your way to the right, we include full up style skills, and as you continue even farther, skills include double up and high to high variations. There are also notes listed under some of the styles of skills. For releases and twisting skills, when scoring difficulty, judges will take into account the following: minimum movement of the bases, limited number and type of connections between the bases and top, the top person's beginning and ending position, and completion of the skill. For minimum movement of the bases, think about a full-up switch-up. There are ways to do the skill where the bases make a full turn, an option where the bases only make a half turn, and finally an option where the bases stay stationary and the top person completes the entire twist themselves. In this example, the bases remaining stationary would be harder than the ones where the group rotates. For limited number and type of connections, take in consideration a full-up to extended. Our two examples here would be if the top person hops in and crosses their legs so that during the full-up, all bases and spotters can remain in contact. This would be scored lower than the traditional full-up where only one base remains in contact during the transition. We will talk about the starting and ending position of the top person as well as the completion of skill together since they go hand in hand. Think about skills where the top person's head is facing one direction, however the shoulders, hips, and feet are all facing another direction. These skills would not receive as much credit as another option where the entire body is rotating. For completion of skill, judges will account for skills that occur as one transition. Twisting skills is typically where this occurs the most. Teams will have nearly perfect full-ups, but will adjust the skill to a 1.5 up, and based on the execution, the skill will full up, have a drastic change in pace, and then the skill will complete later. For inversions, credit will only be received if the weight of the top person is held in the upper portion of their body. The skill must be inverted at the dip. Skills where the top person is horizontal or simply leaning forward would not fall under this grouping. For the last style, co-ed, judges will reward unassisted skills more than their assisted counterparts. Here we have an example of 4 teams in the medium varsity division. Judges will need to script the routine similar to what is listed here, noting the number of skill as well as the starting and ending positions are very important. For comparison, team number 2 performs every skill that team number 1 performs, however they're all higher level in skill. When team 1 performs hands full around, team 2 performs high to high full arounds. When 1 performs low to high TikToks, team 2 comes in with high to high. Finally, team 2 performs a back handspring entry to stretch, while team 1 performs a round off. When we add in Team 3, we notice they're not building the same number of skills as Team 1 or 2. After scripting Team 3, they would rank lower than both Teams 1 and 2. Team 4 would come in below Team 3, even though they perform the same number of skills, their level of skill is significantly lower than the others. The rankings would be as follows. Team 2 would have the highest difficulty score, followed by Team 1, Team 3, and finally Team 4. For co-ed teams, stunts will be accounted for in the partner stunt section as well as included when scoring the building overall impression. Here we have 3 co-ed teams. Team 2 performs one more stunt than the other teams, as well as having more stunts in the air when you look at the third skill performed. When you compare them to Teams 1 and Team 3, they would have the highest difficulty. Now looking at Team 1 and Team 3 is showcasing a more difficult skill at the beginning to drive that team above Team 1. Our ranking for stunt difficulty should be Team 2 with the highest score, followed by Team number 3, and finally Team number 1. We'll come back to the use of co-ed skills after talking about the building overall impression. Moving into the pyramid section, we're looking for the same components as stunts when we refer to proper technique, synchronization, and spacing. However, during the pyramid section, we'll also want to include the type and execution of connections. This includes the assistance of bracers, correct and visually appealing placement of arms, hands, and feet during structures. Difficulty in pyramids will be rewarded for the level of skill, which includes load-in, release moves, origins, and landings. Similar to stunts, judges will take into account the number of stunts and structures, as well as the number of bases used. Other things to consider would be the number of tops performing more elite skills, and including single base skills to create more groups. The pyramid progression works similar to the stunt progression chart, with skills starting on the left and becoming more difficult as they make their way to the right. A brace flip is a great way to talk about origins and landings. Starting in a load position and landing in a cradle would be one of the starting points for learning these types of skills. As teams advance, they would want to work on starting and ending at a higher level. The last scoring section for our building judges is the overall impression. This is where teams will be rewarded for the transitions and creativity, and for our co-ed teams, the use of co-ed skills throughout the routine. Judges will be looking at different types of skills, how they're linked together, and the effortless and seamless flow. They'll also be looking for those wow factors and variations that differentiate them from other teams. One additional thing to look for during a routine scored on the co-ed sheet is the use of co-ed skills. Teams will be rewarded in this category for continuing to build co-ed style skills. These skills are not required to be difficult, but should showcase the team's ability to utilize co-ed stunts. Back to our co-ed teams from earlier. When we look at the use of co-ed skills, all three teams are only co-ed stunning. However, Team 2 is utilizing more co-ed stunts. Team 1 and 3 both seem to be on par with each other. When taking this into account, both Teams 1 and 3 should be considered the same for use of co-ed skills, when Team 2 should be rewarded more. Since the overall impression includes more than just this one caption, ensure that the scores are not solely based on the amount of co-ed stunts, but could be used as a way to separate teams that use mostly group stunts compared to another team that continues to build co-ed stunts. This will conclude the building score sheet breakdown. If you have any questions, please send them over to ucascoring@varsity.com. We look forward to seeing you this year.